Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Brief Let's Talk About It podcast. And before we get started, I just want to let you guys know that this is for educational purposes only. And if it's your first time tuning in to one of my episodes, do me a favor. If you have not already, go over to the YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button and hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time we drop a new episode. And as always, today we got another amazing guest. And my guest today is Toya Bond. She is an acclaimed author of two #1 international best-selling books. She is a legal professional, media host, and small business owner. She is the host of Speaking of Love podcast, which I had the honor of being on. Amazing show, amazing guest. And we talked about everything. She is and that show was created in the honor of her father, who took his life in a murder-suicide. Since the tragedy, Toya has become an advocate for mental health and suicide prevention. As a minority woman, Toya is nationally recognized by Black Women in Radio, BWIR, for her outstanding and influential contributions to Black radio culture and digital media around the globe. Toya also serves on the board of directors for Kevin Saw. She has been featured in several media publications for her advocacy efforts, and including Fox News, Macomb Daily News, Michigan Chronicle, Authority Magazine, and more. And she is the co-author with me in this book, The Relentless Book, Overcoming Stories of Adversity. And her chapter is called Speaking of Love, and it's chapter 20, page 179. So if you guys ever get a chance to pick up that copy, check out her chapter. And now, without further ado, I'm going to bring on my next guest, Toya.
Hi, Tony. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
I'm happy to have you here, and welcome to the show. And before we get started, introduce yourself. Tell people who you are and where you're from.
Well, my name is Toya, and I am the host of Speaking of Love podcast. It's a podcast that I created in honor of my dad. My dad took his own life in a murder-suicide a little over 3 years ago. So since the tragedy, I have really focused my efforts on becoming an advocate for suicide prevention and awareness. I am born and raised in the city of Detroit. I work in the city of Detroit, and I live about 10 minutes east of the city of Detroit. I'm in a little small suburb here in Greater Detroit, Michigan metropolitan area. And I'm here to talk about grief, my journey, but most of all, I'm here to spread love. So thank you for this opportunity, Tony.
You're very, very welcome. I mean, we talked. I've been on your show. It was such an amazing show, and thank you for that opportunity as well. And so let's dive into it. Let's talk about Toya's journey of how Toya became who she is. You know, I've read your chapter. We talked about it before. Let's dive into it.
Well, here's the thing, Tony. My father was an amazing guy. He was an educated Black man. He was one of the first individuals to go to college in his family. He was a news, radio, TV broadcast engineer for over 30 years for a major news station here in Metro Detroit. He had it all together. By all outward appearances, life was beautiful for him. He was successful. He was handsome. He had children. He had a family that loved him. But up under all of the success behind his name, there was a lot of pain, and he struggled a lot in his life. And all of those problems led to a very horrible tragedy. I woke up in the middle of the night on March 2nd of 2020, and I looked at my phone, and I had several missed calls, several text messages from people in my family. I turned on the news, and I came to realize that my father had taken his own life in a murder-suicide. He murdered his wife, and then moments later, he used a firearm and he took his own life. The incident occurred in the condo that the married couple shared. They had only been married for 9 months. and nobody saw this coming. And as a result of the tragedy, my life has been turned in a different direction. My life will never be the same before waking up to get that phone call. But I want everyone to know that there is life after experiencing such a horrible tragedy. And if I can help you understand that the pain is real, but the recovery, the road to recovery, and the road to turning my pain into a greater purpose is possible because of people like you, Tony, who give me the opportunity to speak about my journey.
I definitely appreciate that, and which leads me to the question. And I know you don't have to answer it if you don't want to. Okay, so I'll always leave that as an option. Now, when you get this news, what is your first response? Because you have siblings as well, correct? So
Yes.
what is your response, and what is your siblings' response, and what is your family? How are they reacting to what just happened? Right?
Mm-hmm. Well, when I got the phone call and I returned the call and I was told about what happened, my first reaction was no, no way. I was in shock. I couldn't believe it. It didn't seem real. And then I
Mhm.
turned on the news, and my father was a radio TV broadcast engineer for many years. He covered countless stories throughout his career. And here he was on the news with the camera facing towards him, as opposed to him being the one with the camera. So it was a very difficult moment. I was in shock. I didn't believe it. So my first reaction was I couldn't even cry. I was just stunned. No one saw this coming. It
Right.
wasn't, he didn't exhibit, well, hindsight is 2020. Now I know what the warning signs were, but at that moment I had no idea that he was struggling as much as he was. So I was just shocked. Yeah.
Wow. Now, I man, that is so amazing, and you talk about it. You talk about it in your chapter in the book as well. Um,
Hmm.
that is truly amazing that you've done that, because you opened up the doors, and and it paved the path, right, for you to do the work that you're doing now. Now, how did your family react to it, right? Because everybody's going to react to it differently, and you would think that with the job that he has, that's a beautiful job, and the way that you speak about him, he was an amazing man, right? And like most people who take their lives or are struggling with things like that, we, especially as men, right, we have a good way of putting on that mask so people aren't aware of what's going on with us, or sometimes, like you said, we're not aware of the telltale signs if we've never experienced anything like that. So
Right.
now, how is your family? How are your is your family reacting to the news as well?
Well, when we first got the news, every person had a different reaction. Some people were angry. My sister was extremely devastated. She couldn't hold her head up. She cried. We all had a different streams of emotion. We all went through what they call shock. There's that initial shock, the anger, the rage. We went through a whole stream of emotions, but the common denominator in all of us is that we did not know that he was struggling as bad as he was. No
Right.
one saw this coming. No one.
Now, now that opened up the doors for you to start your journey in the mental health field and being a suicide prevention advocate, and things like that. Now, opening up the doors, the things that you learn now, right? You know what I'm saying? Kind of reflects, oh, I saw this, right?
Mhm.
So now you're more aware of those things. Now, how is it? How is it a relation with your story? How does it help you help others in their journey, right? Because mental health ties into suicide prevention and things like that, which makes you more efficient in the area of that as well, right? So now you're working with people. How is that story helping become more aware of what other people are going through?
Well, what it is, Tony, is I feel like now I'm more prepared. I know what the warning signs are. For example, my dad would always make jokes about looking for the Ambassador Bridge. For
Mm,
example, I would call him after a long day and I go, "Hey, Dad, how are you? How was your day today?" And he'd go, "Oh, I'm tired. I was just looking for the bridge." And I would go, "Looking for the bridge? Why are you looking for what bridge?" And he would go, "I want to look for the Ambassador Bridge so I can jump." And we would laugh it off. But now
mm,
I realized that there was an element of truth to his sarcasm. He really wanted to jump. My father used a lot of humor to mask his pain. He was the funniest guy in the room. He would crack so many jokes. I remember one time he was sick and we were in the hospital and the nurse was taking his blood pressure. And the nurse asked him, she said, "Hey, Herman, are you allergic to anything?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'm allergic to criticism." And that was his way of taking the attention off of him because he knew his blood pressure was going to be high
right.
as she was taking it. So he had a funny way of making everything a joke. But now I realize that that was his way of masking his pain. Look at Robin Williams, the
Mm,
comedian. People who have a comedic spirit, those are the individuals that struggle the most because they make everyone around them feel good. They bring humor into every situation, but behind the laughter there is an element of pain somewhere. There's a struggle somewhere, and that's what enhances their ability to be funny. So now that I've gone through this with my father, I'm very skeptical of people who are just hilarious individuals who can make you laugh because there's something behind it. There is a motivator behind the humor. So I've learned a lot about suicide. I've learned a lot about the science behind the human mind and what causes an individual to want to take their own life. And I understand my father better now in his absence than I ever would have had this not occurred.
Now, I want to go back before then, right? Because I want people to understand the relationship that you have with your dad growing up, right? We talked about it. It's an amazing, amazing person, an amazing man, right? And so as a child, how was the relationship? I'm saying with you and your siblings and your father, right? Because he did a lot of great, amazing things with you guys, right? Took you places, had fun with you, and things like that. How was that?
My relationship with my dad was wonderful. My mom and dad were never married, so I would go over to my dad's house on the weekend, and my father was married to another woman, and I have a sister and a brother with the other woman. So when I would go over with my dad and my stepmom, we had a wonderful time. We would go to breakfast, he would take us on trips. My father was always there in every major event that happened in my life. When I gave birth to my daughter, when I graduated high school, when I was in a summer camp program in a talent show, everything that happened in my life that was important, my father was always there. I was born on August 23rd, 1975 at 4:49 p.m. At 5:30 p.m., my father was there to hold me in his arms for the first time. My father was a man who was always there. I could call him in the middle of the night. He was always available, always. And he was a wonderful dad. He was a historian by nature. He was an educator. He always had a story to tell. I always left him smarter than I was before. He was just amazing. He had a big heart, an infectious laugh. He was a heavy set guy. He was morbidly obese. And right before the tragedy, he had the gastric bypass surgery. And my dad was a heavy set guy. He was a big teddy bear. Everyone loved him, but nobody saw this coming. Nobody.
And it, like you said, you mentioned something, Robin Williams, but it also brings up Twitch, right? You know what I'm saying? The guy, the dance instructor that used to be with Ellen DeGeneres, right? You know what I'm saying? I think about all of those things because no one saw that coming as well. No one saw that. Robin Williams, grew up with him, right? Amazing guy. Loved it. Loved his work. Loved Mork and Mindy. Loved what I'm saying, Mrs. Doubtfire. All of those things. Seemed like a very, happy guy on the outside. And I remember a show that not a show, an interview that he did, which kind of relates to what you said. When he talked about the beast of depression, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how it's easier, and to relate to what you just said, easier to tell jokes and make others happy than to dive into that area of depression. But at the end of the day, we still have to deal with that beast, right?
Yeah.
So it's still, it relates to what you said. And then Twitch, no one saw that one coming as well, right? We were sitting around one day, he's teaching these young kids how to dance, and the next day we get the news that he took his life. And it just, it just took me for a loop, made me started thinking, and listening to your story, my heart is with you, because I know how hard these things can be, these podcasts, sharing your story, because it takes us to a place and everything. And so you are always my first concern when it comes down to having these conversations and things like that.
Yeah, these kind of conversations, Tony, are very helpful to me because it's like a form of therapy. I get to talk to people who share a common journey of grief, like yourself, losing your son. I've lost my dad, his wife. So I feel a sense of comfort being able to talk about this. I wish that there had been a podcast that my dad could have watched. He died on a Monday. I wish that, you and I are right here right now. Today is Sunday. I wish that the day before he died, he could have watched something like this, and maybe the outcome could have been different. So this is very helpful to me.
I appreciate that. I definitely appreciate that. I just like to be mindful of people because, man, that is so deep. But you've done something in honor of your dad, your podcast, right? Now let's talk about how you started your podcast into this world.
Okay, so the night of the tragedy, when I came to learn what my father had done, I knew in that moment that I was not going to let him die in vain. I was not going to let his last memory be of such tragedy. So my father was a radio TV broadcast engineer, and many years ago, he used to host a radio program called Speaking of Sports. And so when he died, I wanted to do something to honor him by doing what he loved. He loved public speaking. He loved radio. So Speaking of Sports was his radio show, an award-winning radio show at that he hosted many years ago. So I wanted to do something like that, but I don't know anything about sports, but I know a little bit about love. So I decided, Speaking of Sports was his show. Maybe I'll start a show, Speaking of Love. And so here we are. I started a podcast in his honor. I've interviewed people from all around the world, different walks of life, on the sole purpose of spreading love and raising awareness about suicide prevention. Tony, you were my 130th guest on my podcast. So I've done 130 episodes in honor of my dad. And as I've told you before, it's a form of therapy for me because it has helped me in my journey of grief and spreading love and putting an end to suicide and mental health awareness and all of that. So that's how my podcast started.
Right.
Speaking of love.
Speaking of love podcast, people. And where can people find your podcast, before we move over to the next question?
Well, my podcast is on all major podcast platforms. It's on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, everywhere you can find your podcast. you'll find Speaking of Love. Just type Speaking of Love in the search bar. I'm also on YouTube, on Facebook, Speaking of Love.
Since then, you have had some major accomplishments. You've been on you've been awarded. You've been on Black Women in Radio. Now,
Mhm.
how exciting is that? How did that come about?
Well, when I started my podcast, someone reached out to me from a network called Black Women in Radio, and they asked me to enter into a contest about my podcast, and I submitted all my information, and they selected me to be the winner of the podcast. So I won an award, and I'm nationally recognized by Black Women in Radio for my influential contribution to the Black radio culture.
Nice, nice. And you've been around. I mean, you've been in um, Black radio culture. You've been in digital media around the globe, and you've been in magazines as well, right?
Yes, I have. I was in Medium magazine. I've been in the Michigan Chronicle. I've been on the Fox 2 News. I've been in the Grosse Pointe newspaper. I've been in the Pittsburgh Chronicle newspaper. So I've had a lot of media attention for my advocacy efforts in the world of suicide prevention.
Nice, nice, nice. And now, with your work in suicide prevention and mental health and everything, I have to ask, because COVID, when COVID happened, we seen a spike, right? We seen a spike, and when you in this field, it was the thing that we kept trying to warn officials before it even happened. Like, hey, we have a problem. And I know out here in Colorado, no one wanted to listen to us, right? We were like, hey, we have a problem. We see this thing coming. And they were like, well, I remember the craziest thing somebody told me when I told them about mental health and, the work that I was doing with men. And this congressman told me, he goes, well, when it comes down to men, we just find other things to do. And it kind of rubbed me the wrong way because I said, yeah,
Mhm.
you're absolutely right. We do find other things to do. Look at the rate of suicide. Look at the rate of addictions. Look at the rate of all of these different things that you just blew off. Now, Mr. Congressman, since you want to build a mental health facility, you need to do your job. You know what I'm saying? Oh, I went off on him. I went off on him. I was like, no,
I'm glad
we're not going to go past this, right? You know what I'm saying? We're not going to do it. And so then when COVID hit, he had to eat his words because then everything that I had been trying to tell him actually it spiked through the roof. Now, what was the thing? What was the one thing that you saw during COVID? Because COVID it separated a lot of people, brought a lot of things to the forefront. And what was the major challenges that you had to endure during that time, during the lockdown, quarantine?
Well, my dad's funeral was on a Sunday, and that following Wednesday, we went into the lockdown for COVID-19. So he died in March 2nd of 2020, and the COVID-19 crisis started around, I want to say Wednesday, March 13th. So a few days after my dad's funeral, we all went into lockdown and we were isolated in our homes. So the biggest factor for suicide is isolation. So
Yeah.
that was a recipe for disaster. It was for our own safety and our own health, but at the same time, it wasn't good for our mental health. So the numbers of suicide spiked because of the isolation. People being alone, not being able to go to work, not being able to go to the gym and work out, not being able to participate in activities that bring them happiness. So that was the biggest thing. The isolation is what set in the depression, the
Mhm.
anxiety, and they're henceforth causing the suicide numbers to go up during the COVID crisis.
Now
Isolation is the biggest factor.
yeah, it really was. I saw the whole thing. Now I never locked down. I was considered essential during that time. So when
Yeah, me
quarantine
too.
happened. Yeah, I was driving around, man. I was driving around. They were like, "Can you come over here?" I was like, "Yep, I'm on my way." So I was working with a lot of EMTs. I was working with the police and things like that because they were being dispatched to calls that in in other situations would have been handled with aggression. But then, what I'm saying, we started the mental health first aid patrol, and we started working as alongside law enforcement, going, hey, in situations like that, instead of you handling it, why don't you call us, because we're better equipped to handle these things, and that way we can do the de-escalation process and actually get people the help that they deserve. And so it was amazing. It took us a while to do it, but we actually saw the benefit of us being a part of that. And the police were able to focus themselves more on true crimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And let us have these over here because we had to fight them, man. We had to fight them. Like, hey, not everybody needs to go to jail. What you're doing is that you're escalating a problem that doesn't need to be escalated. So
Mm-hmm.
having that role and being considered essential in that area, you working with was you working with the kids at that time as well?
Well, no, I'm a legal professional at this point in my life. So during the COVID-19 crisis, I was considered essential too because I work alongside a team of attorneys. And so I have to go through files, I have to scan paperwork, I have to draft legal documents. So I was considered essential as well. And I was working during the pandemic. So, yes, there were a few of us in the office every day working and getting things done, but we were careful.
Yeah,
We made sure that we kept our distance, we wore our masks, we kept our hands and things like that clean. So, but there was still a sense of isolation. Even though you were essential, Tony, I was essential, there was still that element of isolation because the world was different. You go out and you get in your car, you get on the expressway, and you're the only car there. So
yeah, yeah.
there was still, even though we were out there, it was just different. It was different.
That's very true. I didn't even think about it that way because I guess I'm one of those guys. I don't mind being alone. I don't. I I really don't. And the reason being, it took me a long time to get to that place, but I've been alone for a long time. So not being around people was not a big strange thing for me. And to be able to go out and serve people was the thing that kept me going. I was like, I don't care, I'm out. You know what I'm saying? Driving around, streets were empty, stores was closed, all kinds of things. Like I watched communities. Um, I watched communities get turned inside out. Right.
Hmm.
I watched I watched hospice. A lot of facilities get wiped out by this thing, and I was, and like I said, the thing that kept me sane was that I was able to be with the families that, sitting outside a hospice, we had to watch through the windows as their loved ones were passing away from this horrible thing, right? And so being able to be a part, being able to provide that support to them and things like that was I was okay, so I wasn't necessarily alone, but to be there with other people in their time and be able to comfort them and be able to keep them company. And I watched a lot of kids that had to go virtual. I watched
Hmm.
them struggle. I didn't understand to because it's been since 1990, 1992 since I've been in school.
Hmm.
And so, for me, I've been out of school for so long that I didn't even understand the challenges that these children were facing in school. And then, now we're getting the news of these children committing suicide. Their mental health is declining in a way that was so detrimental that their families that they were around. I watched alcoholism, drug abuse go through the ceilings. I watch, you know, um, child abuse or abuse period, family abuse go through the ceiling and things like that. And I used to sit around and scratch my head like, what in the hell is going on? And then it dawned on me. people are now in a situation to where they once had an outlet to escape um, said abuse. They no longer have that, so now they're trapped in one place, and having to endure these things as well. You know, and to me, it was just like, wow, we have a bigger problem than what I actually expected, and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. Being quarantined, I can see the benefit of it, but also saw the downside, the upside down turn of it as well. In our children, and now you working with youth, right? So how did that experience with COVID help you in helping the youth now in mental health and suicide prevention?
Well, now I belong to an organization called Kevin Song. And with Kevin Song, I sit on the board of directors. I also serve on several committees, and we are dedicated to putting an end to suicide in numbers when it comes to teens, when it comes to elderly. We service all individuals. So my advocacy efforts with Kevin Song has really helped me streamline my education that I've gained in the realm of suicide prevention. And so helping people and understanding the warning signs. Do you know that every 11 minutes, someone in our country dies by suicide? So that means, Tony, you and I have been on this podcast right now for 31 minutes. So already two people have died by suicide. You are far more likely to encounter someone having suicidal thoughts than you are to encountering someone who's possibly having a heart attack. And heart attack is one of the number one causes of death. So suicide
Mhm.
is very prevalent. If you're in a room with 20 people, Tony, at least two of those individuals, statistically speaking, at least two of those people in the room of 20 are having suicidal thoughts at that very moment.
Wow. And I can relate to that, right? Because for the longest time, I struggled with suicidal ideation, right? There wasn't a day that didn't go by for a long time where I wouldn't sit around and just go, how easy would it be? Who would care? Like, and I would think about it because it started from when I became very malicious in planning out my suicide, right? And when you think about things like that, it's like, wow, if I have the capability of doing this, I wonder how many other people have the capability of doing this. Because
Mm.
I planned that, like, I was very strategic in the things that I've done, and planning it out. Like, I planned it out for 2.5 months. And what I did, I paid attention to the people around me. And I noticed that people called me on certain days and they were very consistent about it. But now, once I figured out that routine, I said, you know what? I'm going to see if this works. So, what I did when they called me on certain days, I wouldn't answer. I wouldn't answer them at all. And then I would call them on the days that I would want to talk to. And then
Mm.
once I got consistent with that, people just expected me to call them on certain days, which in turn left me that weekend open. And then once I had 2, maybe 3 weeks of consistent, no one calling me on the weekends, I was like, oh, I got this now. And so then I thought about it. I said, this is what I'm going to do. Like, I was very detailed about what I was going to do. So I connected with the guy. I was like, hey, I need to get a gun, and everything. And he didn't, at first he looked at me and was like, Tony, what you need a gun for? I just want it for protection. Are you okay? That's the first time somebody ever questioned what I was doing, right? Are you okay, man? Because I was like, yeah, I'm okay. I just need something for protection. We live in a crazy world right now. He goes, well, like, all right, man, like, if you need to talk or something, you let me know. I said, no, man, I'm good. And he sold me the gun. I said, for some bullets for it and everything. And I tell you, I remember going to work. No one questioned me or anything like that. And then after work, my car was already packed, and I took off. And here I am. I drove out to Utah, right? And I said, Friday night I got there. just went to sleep. The next following day on Saturday, I went to the river. I fished. I said my goodbyes to the people that were already gone and everything, and spent the day out there, and I just remember I felt nothing.
Wow.
I felt nothing at all. Like I was just completely empty. And I sat there and I was just like, okay. That night I went back to the hotel. The next morning I checked out and I drove out to the middle of the desert or in Moab, middle of nowhere, right? Nobody's out there. And I'm sitting out there and I'm thinking to myself, like, yeah, this is it. I'm done. Still nothing. So empty, so numb to everything. I didn't think about my sister. I didn't think about my nieces. I wasn't thinking about anything except for the world would be a better place without me.
Wow.
That's all I could think was the world would be a better. Who's going to care? I'm just another black boy out here in the streets, and I contemplated on my life and how much I've done, and then how much I deserved what I was about to do. Right. Oh yeah. I told myself all of that. I was like, I deserve this because, like I couldn't take care of my son. I failed at that. I lost my mother. I'm an orphan in this world. My younger brother is gone. I'm the oldest and the last of my generation, of my bloodline. So why not? I can't have any more kids. What? I have no purpose. I have no direction. My life is just a waste of time. That's what I was telling people. And it was such a dark moment because of how easy it was for me to switch everything over to where it did not bother me to take my life.
Wow.
It's only a matter of seconds. I don't want to hang myself because I don't want to break my neck and then be paralyzed for the rest of my life, and that'd be my luck, right? So I sat there and I was 2 seconds away from pulling the trigger. 2 seconds.
Wow. So what stopped?
You know what? Honestly, I want to say, it was God.
Mm-hmm.
God stopped me in that 2 seconds, and it came in the form of a voice called out my name, just as clear as I'm talking to you. A voice said, Tony. Mm. And when it did, I hurried up and I panicked and I threw the gun in the front of the seat and I jumped up. Now it's pitch black out here. Now I am very sure no one followed me out here because no one knew where I was. But I was so nervous that someone would see me doing it, and that was the first time I thought about someone else. I was like, I do not want this to be the last image that someone has of me. That's the reason why I came out here, to be secluded, like you said, seclusion, right? And I jumped up, and I'm looking around. Now there's nobody else out here, so I turned over. It's just me, the mountains, and the sky. It's pitch black out here. I had planned this thing out. I was like, I'll be out here. The car's paid up. They won't be looking for it. By the time they do find me, the animal's going to take me apart. You know what I'm saying? There's going to be nothing else left. I literally thought this thing through every detail. And it was, when I sit back on it now, it's like, man, how hurt do you have to be to plan out every detail? Even after I'm gone, I knew what was going to happen. I knew that the animals would smell me, and come and it's a free meal. It's a circle of life. Why not give myself back to nature, right? You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to worry about the burial. I'm not going to worry about being cremated. We don't have to worry about insurance or anything like that. I'm going to make it real simple for everyone, right? I'll make it real simple. And that's when that aha moment came, and that voice said, hey, now that I have your attention, I want to show you something. And it took me a long time to get out of victim mode. I wanted to blame everybody for the life that I led. I didn't want to take no sort of accountability. I wanted to blame everything that ever happened on me um, as the reason why I was the way that I was, right? Um, and then it dawned on me after a while of listening to this voice, and I was talking to it just like we're talking now. And that voice said, "Oh, you thought your life was about you."
Wow.
And that's when it dawned on me.
Mm.
Everything I had gone through in my life had never been about me. It was about the people that I encountered during the journey of
Mhm.
being
Mm.
who I was and then becoming who I am now. It's all part of the process. And I realized that the moment that I looked in the mirror, just like most of us do, you know, I wasn't the same person that I was back then, but I kept holding on to the things that kept me safe.
Mm. Mhm.
And when those things was threatened, life had no meaning.
Right.
And being alone in this world, as you said before, that seclusion, being alone in this world and nobody, and you think about your future and things like that. I didn't see this coming.
Mhm.
I didn't see this coming. I didn't see Latoya coming. I didn't see the book coming. I didn't see this podcast. I didn't see any of this.
Mhm.
All I saw was this sucks royally, right? Royally. And so, with that being said, I mean, you work with children now. Do you see some of those telltale signs now, to help you stay ahead of the curve?
Yes, I'm definitely a lot more insightful now than ever before. Okay, so when my dad passed away, I was no longer working in the field of education. But when I was working in the field of education, I had a lot of students who struggled, who didn't have love at home, and they had parents that were so busy just trying to put food on the table that they didn't have the capacity to love a child the way children needed to be loved. So my office in the school was a safe haven for children. It was the one place that you could go in that school and get unconditional love. The school that
Mm,
I worked for, we had at the time I left, there were 660 something kids there, and I knew every single child in that building by first and last name. I could be at
wow.
my desk. I could be at my desk working, and a child could walk up behind me and ask me for something, and I would know who it was without looking at their face. I knew Jeremiah's voice. I knew everybody. I knew them. I could feel their energy without even looking at their faces. I would know their names. So I was very connected to my work. I was very connected to my students. So when I did have students who revealed to me that there were problems at home and that they no longer wanted to be alive, or they were thinking of taking their own lives, my role was to open up my arms, my big arms. I'm a big girl. I would open up my arms and I would embrace them figuratively and literally with love. Because when people take their own lives, there's a lack of love somewhere. Whether it's a lack of self love or it's a lack of being able to receive the love that's around you, there's always a lack of love. So when you give that love, especially to a child, and you let them know, hey, you matter. When I look at you, I see you. When you come behind me and ask Miss Bond for something, and I call your name and I know your voice without even seeing your face, that's love. And that's all these children needed, was someone to be there for them, someone to show up for them. And I'm not saying that all of their parents were bad. It's just that sometimes as parents, especially single moms, we're so focused on paying those bills, putting food on the table, making sure the clothes are clean, we don't have the time to invest in the ones that we've given birth to. They need that love. And without that love, they're headed for a life of struggle. So my role was always number one, to let my office door swing on hinges of love, no matter what you've done. No matter if you're in trouble, if you're being suspended, if you're having discipline problems, my office was the one place that you could come and get that love. And when I discovered that there were struggles, I would talk to them, listen to them, hear them out, because that's what they needed the most. They don't get that at home a lot of times. They just get parents shooting demands at them. Go do this, go do that. It's time to go to bed. So my role was always to give the kids love. And unfortunately, I did have one student who took her own life. And it was very tragic. It was very sad. But at the time of her death, I wasn't around. She had already left the school. But it was a challenge. It was a challenge. And every single day, no matter what I was going through as an individual, I had to put myself on a stage, so to speak, because I had to be present for the ones who mattered to me the most. I worked at that school 9.5 years. I never missed a day at work. And you want to know why I never missed a day at work? Because I knew that if I wasn't there, my babies wouldn't get the love that they needed. So I made it a point to always be there for them. So the one lesson that I would tell any person watching this right now who works in the field of education is to be a source of love for all of your students. Love them when they're bad, love them when they're good. And I had this one student. He was expelled from our school. He was a terror. He did a lot of bad things, and so eventually they expelled him from the school. And a few weeks after he left, the principal was cleaning out his locker. And in his locker, there was a letter that he had written about me. And in the letter, it talked about how he was tired of being on this earth. But if it wasn't for Miss Bond, he would have taken his own life. And the principal brought me the letter and I read it. And I was surprised that I had made that type of impact in his life. So.
Wow. But I wish I had Miss Bond in my life when I was younger too, because I could have used some big old hugs, man. But I didn't realize that, because I was so shut off from everything early on in life. And I talk about this, I was introduced to the darkness of people at a very early age. Mm-hmm. And that's why I became the protector that I needed. But I also came detached from everything because I have to protect myself. I now, since no one's going to come and save me, I now have to learn how to survive in this world. But actually, what I'm saying, now that I understand that what people are capable of doing, I have to become something different.
Yeah.
I had to become that version that, what I'm saying, I don't wish on anyone, but if you have to, learn how to survive, learn how to control it. And I didn't learn how to control it until I was later on in life. And I realized, like, I might want to change some things around, right? You know what I'm saying? So I could have definitely used, and don't get me wrong, I come from a really, really loving family and everything. But there were some things that, when I tried to tell people, no one wanted to believe me. So I learned how to keep my mouth shut. I learned how to just be quiet, right?
Force stuff it, so to speak.
Right.
Yeah. Suffering in silence.
Right, because I was like, no one's going to believe me anyway, so it's a waste of my time to try to tell anyone. And so I did. I just learned how to survive in this world. And then now, and I want to talk about this because every time I see your post on Facebook, I get hungry. I definitely get hungry. If you guys haven't seen her Facebook page, man, go there. I'm telling you, she's going to make you hungry. So just FYI, you know what I'm saying? So let's talk about this. You have a passion for cooking.
Mm-hmm.
Where did that passion come from?
I come from a family where food is love. My grandmother was a very respected community leader in her community. She didn't have a lot financially and materialistically, but she had a lot of love. And my grandmother was an amazing cook. So I grew up in a household where I watched my grandmother cooking all the time. My mom was a great cook. And so I just genetically inherited that love for cooking. And the best part of cooking is serving. So I've always been a great cook. I've always known how to bake very well. When I was in middle school, my teacher, my home economics teacher, her name was Miss Bankston, Columbus Middle School in Detroit. And she demonstrated a lesson on how to bake homemade peanut butter cookies from scratch. So I went home and I mastered the recipe on my own, and it became a household staple, a favorite in my home. My brother loved them. My stepfather loved them. So it was like, wow, if I could do that, then I'm going to learn more. And it sparked a lifelong passion for baking. So it started when I was a young girl, and I enjoy cooking. The best part about cooking is serving, to give up, to present a person with a plate of love, because in my eyes it's food, but it's love. So when you present a person with a plate of love, the look in their eyes and the embrace that you get from that is it's incredible. So I love it. I love to feed people. I do.
I love that, man. I love that. Like I said, I've seen what you be posting on there. I'm like, man, I'm gonna have to Latoya, you better stop doing this. I will show up at your door with a big old plate and some Tupperware because I'm gonna have to have some leftovers.
Definitely.
You may have
Definitely.
the desserts and stuff popping off. I'm like, this ain't even right? But I love it though. I love it. And you started a company behind your cooking as well. What's the name of your company?
Well, the name of my business is called Beautiful Creations by Toy. Now, it started out as a wooden door hanger business. I make craft designs. I make ornaments for people's front doors. I make teacher classroom items. So it started out as a business, a wood business, wood decor business, but it has now elevated to also a home bakery. So I follow the Michigan cottage home kitchen laws. And so I do sell my baked goods in a small little store in downtown Detroit. And I'm not lying, but every day the items sell out. In the morning when I'm delivering, I've got people waiting already there before I can even get there. So it's blown up. And I did not expect this type of response, but I truly embrace it. So that's my business.
Nice. Now, how can people order? Because you do orders as well, right? And
Yes,
so
I
how can
do.
people order and where do you ship to? Or
Well,
do you ship?
I don't ship my baked goods just yet, but I do. If you are in the Metro Detroit area and you're in the mood for a good pound cake or a Southern peach cobbler, you can definitely look me up, and I will be happy to oblige. Take care of you.
Nice. Now, I always like to wrap up the show by asking my guests if you could leave the audience with something, what would you tell them?
If I could leave the audience with one message today, that message would be to heal your personal relationships on a daily basis. People that you love in your life are struggling with things that you may not even know what the cause of that struggle is. So, if you have someone in your life that you've been distant from, you haven't talked to them, call them today, see how they're doing. Let them know you love them, because you never know when that opportunity will be missed, and we'll never get that back. I'll never get to say I love you to my dad again. I'll never get to call him again. I'll never get the opportunity to hear him crack a joke about the Ambassador Bridge. So just take these moments of life that we have. There's value in every breath that you take. And just embrace the ones that are around us that we love, our family. Call them and say hello. Keep in touch with them, because you never know. Your voice just might be the voice that keeps them around just a little bit longer.
Wow, I love that. Now, the last thing I have to ask, where can people find you?
Well, I'm everywhere. You can find me on Amazon. I have a book that I've written called Speaking of Love. It's a
Mhm.
suicide loss survivor's guide of hope, healing, and love. This book, within 3 hours of being published, became an Amazon #1 bestseller. This book is a tribute to my father. The book is called Speaking of Love. You can find this book on Amazon. And I am available on YouTube. My podcast is Speaking of Love. I'm available on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, all major social media platforms. Latoya Bond is there. But let me just tell you, my name is LA space Toya. My first name is separated. And so the reason I'm such a stickler about that, Tony, I wasn't being mean, but I was the victim of identity theft back in 2016. Yeah, someone stole my identity back in 2016. And when they did, they spelled my name all together as one word. And that's not even my name. So I don't even know how they were able to steal my identity, but it was spelled incorrectly. So I'm very careful about that. So it's LA space capital Toya. My first name is separated. The last name is Bond, Bond, like James Bond. And you can find me, just Google me. I'm right there.
Yeah. No, and trust me, I didn't think that I didn't take it personally, because it's habit, right? To do something like that. And I made the mistake of putting your name together. He was like, hey, just one correction.
Okay.
You spelled my name correctly, right? I was like, hey, you know what? Not a problem. So no, I did not take it personally whatsoever. And so look, Latoya, thank you for being on the show today. Thank you for being so open and vulnerable and sharing your story with everyone. I look forward to more of what we have. And what I'm saying, you guys check out her book as well, Speaking of Love, but also don't forget to pick up your copy of Relentless.
Yes, we co-authored the book together along with, there were 20 of us, and we co-authored that book. And that book became an international bestseller within a few hours of being published. So Tony and I, we are international best-selling authors. We have a lot of love in our hearts. We're here to help. And I do want to throw a plug in. If anyone is feeling suicidal right now, if you're having thoughts of taking your own life, you're tired, you don't want to be here anymore, the world is just against you at this moment, so you feel, please dial 988. It's the suicide lifeline, crisis line. And there are trained professionals there who can help you, who can talk with you. You're not weak. You're not crazy. You're just living in a world that's imperfect. And at times we're going to have those moments. I've had those moments. When my father died, a part of me died too. And I ended up in the hospital, and I was ready to go with my father. I wanted a reunion with my dad. So I know what that feels like, but please dial 988, and there's someone on the other line that's here to help you. Or you can reach out to me. I'll help you. I'll feed you. That'll keep you alive a little longer.
Hey, you know what? You never know, man. You just never know. And like I said, you're going to keep putting those things up on Facebook. I'm going to keep looking at it. I'm going to show up at your door with a plate of food. You know what I'm saying? I may bring some people with me too, like they need to talk to you. I just want to sit down and eat. But while y'all conversate, I'm gonna get full because I'm already knowing the love that's going to be in that place is going to put me to sleep. So as long as you got to pull out, I may take a nap or something. Okay?
Definitely. Food is love.
Food is always love, man. And it's nothing like home cooked meals and a great conversation. It take you a long way and everything. Latoya, thank you for the conversation. Thank you for the day, and I look forward to more. I definitely look forward to more. And for everyone who is tuned in today, hopefully you guys are enjoying these conversations. And if you haven't, if it's your first time and you made it all the way through, do me a favor, go over to the YouTube channel, show some love, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time that we drop a new episode. But also, if you think that anybody could benefit from the conversations that we're having, please share it with them. We got many, many more coming. And go over and check out Latoya's podcast as well. And her information will be down below. And with that being said, I'm Tony Lynch, your host. Thank you guys for tuning in. Latoya, again, thank you for being a part of this today. And until next time, you guys keep your head up. And as Latoya said, if you guys are struggling, please dial 988. There are professionals on the other end that are willing to walk with you through whatever you're going through at in that moment. And also reach out to Latoya. She got those big arms, man. She's gonna give you guys a big hug. So you know what I'm saying. So don't suffer in silence. And with that being said, until next time, peace.